Hi everyone and welcome to this Fan Art Friday video. In this video I want to work on a drawing of 2B from NieR Automata. I've been really excited about attempting this. It was so great to see that a few of you had requested this in the comment sections. NieR Automata is awesomely unique. It has this post-apocalyptic setting where humans have been forced from the Earth and they've settled on the moon, and they're currently in the process of trying to win back Earth from the machines. And to help them fight, they have these battle androids, such as 2B. She's an amazingly unique looking character, and I've really been looking forward to attempting this. In terms of the initial sketch, I decided on a front view of 2B, with her hair overlapping a comic panel in the background. And I just wanted this to be a front view of her head and shoulders, and then I wanted later on to add some details in the background within that comic panel. After that, for the pen outlines, I wanted to use my Copic Multiliner SP 0.03mm. I've absolutely loved working on the outlines recently, and spending an extra hour or two on this process has been extremely beneficial to the end result. I found that keeping those lines as smooth as possible has just been so much fun. I also spent a bit of extra time in this drawing focusing some thicker outlines to the underside of her hair and the blindfold, and some of those features where I was going to add some more shading later on, and just generally spending more time on this process and keeping the lines as smooth as possible. After a little while, once I was finally happy with the outlines, it was time to move on to the colouring. And for the colouring of this drawing, I used Copic Markers, starting off with 2B's skin tones. And I wanted to imagine that there was a light source coming in from the left side, so I was going to add a nice big highlight on the left side of her face, and then add more colour on the right side. So I started with a base layer of colour with pinkish white, and then added some warmer tones over the top of that with pale heath. And then to add some darker shading over the top of that, I used a mixture of pale grape and light grape. I didn't want to use any grey markers to add shading to her skin tones. I wanted the skin tones to stay nice and warm, and I wanted them to contrast all of the cool shading I was going to add throughout the rest of the drawing, as a way of really making those skin tones stand out as a prominent feature. For the colouring of her nose and lips, I blended in some blush and light pink markers, and then also to add some highlighting to make these features stand out, I used a mixture of a white Prismacolor pencil and my Uni-Ball Signo Broad white ink pen. And I actually also used the white Prismacolor pencil to add a highlight going around her chin and neck. For the blindfold, I added a couple of layers of cool grey 5 and 7, and then over the top of that, to add some extremely dark shading, I used a black Copic marker. Then to add some texture to the blindfold and to show some creases and folds in the fabric, I used the white Prismacolor pencil and also the Uni-Ball highlighter pen to add a highlight going along the bottom edge. Moving on from that, it was time to work on one of the more difficult parts of this drawing, that being her hair. So I started with some really light shading at first, with a cool grey 1, just adding streaks with that marker, and then built up towards cool grey 3, and finally cool grey 5. I didn't use too much of the cool grey 5 on the left side, but I used much more of it on the right side, just considering that light source being on the left and how that would affect the highlights in the hair. I also used a cool grey 7 marker to add some really dark shading to the hair in the background around her neck level, and also used a black Copic marker to add the dark shading to the fabric at the top of her head. And after this, to try and add some more detail and some bright highlights to the hair, I used my Uni-Ball highlighter pen, just trying to make all of those locks of hair stand out amongst that darker shading I added around the right side. Next up, it was time to work on her clothing, and I found the best way to approach the extremely dark shading in this area was to use the black marker first, and then blend across with cool grey 7 and 5. So I was using the black marker to add lots of creases and folds in the fabric, and just to add some really dark shading around the right side of each of the areas, and then blended across with cool grey 7 and cool grey 5 in that order. And I just used that same process for each of the sections of the clothing. And I also added some highlights with the white Prismacolor pencil along all of the folds in the fabric, much like I did with the blindfold. With all of the details of 2B coloured in, it was time to start adding the background, starting with her swords. For this I used a mixture of all of the cool grey markers, and I tried not to add any crazy amount of detail to the swords. I wanted to kind of keep them hidden within the comic panel in the background and kind of have the panel overlapping them. I wanted the main feature of this drawing to be 2B's face, and having those warm skin tones really stand out amongst all of the cooler shading. So once I'd finished working on the shading of the swords, it was then time to add the background. For this, I started with a base layer of some cool grey 5 towards the bottom and blended upwards towards some cool grey 3 towards the top, and just tried to create this kind of a cloudy sky effect. Then over the top of this first layer of the background I added some leaves with a mixture of pea green and verdigris markers, and then also used a white Prismacolor pencil to add some environment effects and some movement all flowing inwards towards the centre of the drawing. For the final stages of this drawing I added some structures in the background with cool grey 5, and then used my Uni-Ball highlighter pen to add some bright highlights, adding some really thick highlights silhouetting 2B, especially her hair, and just making her really stand out in front of that background. Also adding some highlights around her clothing and the swords, and then also using the pen to add some particle effects around the drawing. And after that, this drawing was completed. Overall, I think it took about 5.5 hours to complete, and it was extremely fun to work on. I'm so glad that I saw a few requests of this. It's been something I've been looking forward to working on for a couple of months. So I really hope you like it. Please let me know what you think of this drawing in the comments below. And if you have any suggestions for future drawings or paintings, any fan art, fantasy art or tutorials, please let me know in the comments below. They really help out. If you want to see more videos like this, then make sure you're subscribed, and any likes or shares on this video really mean a lot to me. If you want to follow my progress and keep updated with everything I work on through the week, then be sure to check out the links in the description box below to check out my Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. And once again, thank you so much for the support, and thank you so much for watching this video. It genuinely means so much to me, and I love working on these drawings. I really hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you all soon.